Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie, and this channel is chronicling my journey of living my best life with multiple chronic health conditions. Today I'm gonna sort of do a medical overview. There has been some new updates, plans, whatever you call it. And then if it's not too long, I will sort of go into how I'm functioning, but more than likely that will be the next video. So as far as medically, I'm going to go back a little because I don't know how much sense my previous video made. I vaguely remember recording it, but anyway, so I had seen the neuromuscular specialist, and he didn't understand most of my test results that I had brought with me, including my cardiopulmonary exercise test, the O2 pulse trends, the anaerobic threshold trends, the lactate levels, all of that sort of stuff, oxygen extraction. He wasn't familiar with any of that. So he couldn't really comment on any sort of mitochondrial issue. He did order some lab work, which some of it was abnormal, and it said it was possibly indicative of mitochondrial dysfunction and clinical correlation would be needed. And then it gave me another test to sort of add to my trends that I can provide doctors if need be, and that is my resting lactate level. That is increasing. It used to be 0.7, and then it was 1.3, and now it is 2. And 2 is the highest it can be without it being flagged as abnormally high. In the hospital, if your lactate was above 2, we'd start running lactate sepsis protocols type stuff. So that's sort of where that threshold is as far as lactate normalcy. And it's because it's showing anaerobic metabolism at rest, which isn't normal. Normally lactate is lower than 2, which is why 2 is sort of that cutoff point for sepsis protocol in a lot of the hospitals. So I've added that to my 3-page list of sort of tests that point towards sort of a mitochondrial or metabolic condition. I went back to the cardiologist who referred me to the neuromuscular specialist and was basically like, I'm not doubting he's good at what he does, but he doesn't know metabolic mitochondrial stuff. I'd asked her before, and she said she thought he did because he does work with some patients that have mitochondrial and metabolic issues, but I'm guessing they were already diagnosed. So he's just sort of helping to manage. He wasn't being the one diagnosing. She did reach out to the mitochondrial specialist, who did agree that I have a lot of things that are common in mitochondrial disease, as well as some things that are atypical. And she believes that I need a muscle biopsy to sort of figure out what's going on. I had talked to the neuromuscular specialist about that. At first he said no, he didn't see a reason to do that, and then by the end of our appointment he did say that he thought it would be useful, but that it would not include electron microscopy. I asked about that specifically because my electron microscopy was abnormal in my cardiac biopsy, and it doesn't really make sense why they wouldn't do it. He was talking about how it's difficult and hard, and if these other tests are normal but the electron microscopy is abnormal, what do you do with that type of thing? So it didn't really give me the warm fuzzies about that department doing electron microscopy. It just sounds like when a doctor is talking about how difficult it is, that just doesn't give me the warm fuzzies about the department interpreting things correctly. The mitochondrial specialist, I guess, had talked to the neuromuscular specialist, and it would be neuromuscular who would be doing the biopsy. And I ask the cardiologist because the mitochondrial specialist isn't in my list of people I can message on the patient portal, and I was sort of like, well, what test is it going to include? Is it going to include electron microscopy? Because if not, I'm not interested, blah, blah, blah. And it is not going to include electron microscopy. I'm being told to just trust them, that it's not needed, which doesn't make sense to me because it's already been abnormal, and my muscles are more impacted than my heart, so it would make sense that if it's abnormal there, it would be more abnormal in muscles, but don't know. But the plan is that I would get a muscle biopsy, and if it is inconclusive, they would refer me to the Undiagnosed Disease Network. And my biggest concern with that would be, are they then going to want a biopsy with electron microscopy? Because it does give more detail about mitochondrial structure and everything like that. And so then I have to do another biopsy. And biopsies for mitochondrial testing are not needle biopsies, they're open. So they cut you open and take a chunk of muscle out. And it's not exactly something I want to do more than once. I don't even really have the time off of work to do it once. So that will be figured out eventually. But that's sort of where things are in terms of the diagnosis journey and next steps with that. I also think in the last video, or one video, I had talked about my diuretic is not really working now unless I lay down, and it works for quite a few hours. It's not like when I'm sitting up, or previously when it was working when I was sitting up, and like 3 hours later it basically had done its thing and everything was fine. This is more like I lost 6 pounds or close to 3 kilos in 6 hours. And then I lost 2 inches or around 5 centimeters around my waist during that time. So I'm holding a lot of fluid. If you've been following the channel, you can see I've gained a lot of weight. So I'm working with a dietitian now who's actually listening to me and listening to what I need. So I'm going to try to do just very low sodium, very low carb for a couple weeks to see if that can get the fluid moving when I am upright. Because other than that, I take the diuretic during the week in the evening, and then I sort of try to lay down, as you saw in the last video, in the zero gravity chair. Doesn't really do the same thing as lying in bed. It's not perfect, but it's better than sitting up. And then I go to bed, but I'm still not really losing a lot of fluid that way. And then on the weekends, I take the diuretic before I go to bed on like Friday and Saturday, and then I lose a lot of fluid, but then it comes right back during the day. So I really need to figure out how much sodium I'm able to eat, how much carb I'm able to eat, especially knowing that with carbs, my blood sugar spikes very quickly with basically all carbs. So that's another reason for the low carb. So that's the current journey as far as diuretic not working, gaining a bunch of weight, and all of that. And that is sort of where medically things stand for now. This is already 9 minutes. I'm not going to do about how I'm functioning. I will end this video here and record that one next, and so that will be the one after this one. But yeah, so I'm not even going to say I'm cautiously optimistic. I am not happy that electron microscopy is not going to be done, because it's just one more thing that might stand between me and getting help. And when I talk about how I'm functioning, like, I'm not doing well on like the day-to-day, and I don't have the energy to fight for electron microscopy either, or to start over with another hospital system that I would have to travel for. So it is what it is, and we'll just have to see what happens. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good day whenever it is you're seeing this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.